The Karthik's Dominion arrived with gifts. Their fleet entered Earth's orbital perimeter, broadcasting open diplomatic codes, shields lowered, weapon ports sealed. They spoke of mutual enemies, shared trade routes, and strategic alignment. After years of quiet hostility along border sectors, their request for alliance surprised the Council of Earth. But humanity listened. We always listen before we decide. The meeting was scheduled aboard the Terran flagship, Resolute Dawn, controlled ground, controlled environment. The Karthik's High Envoy requested the presence of General Marcus Halley, Chief of Staff of the Terran Defense Command. A gesture of respect, they said. Halley agreed. He had negotiated with species far more aggressive than the Karthiks. He did not expect betrayal. He expected calculation. The assassination attempt triggered 3 seconds after the formal greeting. A concealed pulse emitter hidden inside the Karthik's envoy's ceremonial armature discharged at point-blank range. The energy signature was designed to disrupt neural conductivity instantly. No visible wound, no dramatic explosion. Just silence and collapse. The Karthiks believed it would look like sudden cardiac failure, clean, undetectable, strategic. The pulse struck General Halley square in the chest. The chamber lights flickered. Terran security reached for weapons too late. The Karthik's envoy stepped back, already preparing to feign shock. He believed the head of humanity's military had just fallen. He believed leadership would fracture. He believed Earth would scramble. General Halley did not fall. The pulse dissipated across a reactive field embedded beneath his uniform. Terran counterintelligence had anticipated treachery the moment the Alliance request arrived. Halley straightened slowly, eyes steady, voice calm. That was your only chance. Outside the flagship, Karthik's fleet power cores began shutting down one by one. The Alliance meeting was over. The lesson was about to begin. The Karthik's Dominion believed deception was sophistication. For decades they tested Terran border patrols with probing maneuvers, feigned distress calls, and economic pressure disguised as trade. When those tactics failed to weaken human expansion, they shifted strategy. Diplomacy replaced intimidation. Alliance replaced rivalry. They assumed that extending an open hand would lower our guard. They assumed humans wanted peace badly enough to ignore patterns. What they misunderstood is simple. Humanity does not separate diplomacy from defense. Every negotiation is layered with contingency. Every alliance request is audited across decades of behavior. When the Karthiks requested a private meeting with our Chief of Staff, counterintelligence did not celebrate progress. It initiated analysis. It mapped biological signatures, armor anomalies, and ceremonial devices down to molecular density. We prepared for partnership. We prepared for betrayal. If you are watching from a place that has ever seen trust abused, from a city that knows what false promises look like, then you already understand what happened next. Tell me your city and country in the comments. Let this signal travel. If you believe strength is measured by readiness, press like. And if you stand with a species that never walks into a trap unprepared, subscribe. The Karthiks believed removing General Hall would decapitate Terran command. They saw one man and assumed hierarchy. They did not understand distributed authority, layered succession protocols, and embedded adaptive command networks. They mistook visible leadership for structural vulnerability. That was their first error. Their second was believing the assassination attempt would go unnoticed. Because the moment that pulse emitter activated, a silent countermeasure rippled outward. The flagship did not panic. It executed. And in orbit above Earth, something far more decisive than retaliation was already unfolding. The energy discharge that struck General Halley was not random. It was tuned to Terran neural frequency ranges, calibrated using stolen medical telemetry gathered during previous diplomatic exchanges. The Karthiks had studied human biology with quiet obsession. They believed the pulse would scramble synaptic pathways, inducing instantaneous neurological shutdown. No wound, no visible aggression, just collapse. It was engineered to look like a tragic failure of the human body under stress. What they did not account for was the adaptive command mantle embedded beneath Hale's uniform. Developed after 3 prior assassination attempts across different sectors, the mantle projected a micro-layered counterfield that analyzed and inverted directed energy signatures in real time. When the pulse struck, it did not penetrate. It was absorbed, mirrored, and recorded. The weapon revealed itself fully the moment it fired. Terran security did not open fire. That alone unsettled the Karthik's envoy. Instead of chaos, the chamber lights shifted to controlled amber. Lockdown protocols engaged silently. Atmosphere circulation adjusted to containment mode. Every Karthik's delegate present felt the subtle change in pressure as microdrones detached from the ceiling grid and hovered into position. No shouting, no scrambling, just execution of sequence. Outside the resolute dawn, the Karthik's fleet attempted to power weapons in anticipation of confusion. Their targeting arrays failed to initialize. Core reactors stalled mid-surge. Terran cyber warfare units had been nested inside Karthik's firmware for months, awaiting a trigger event. The assassination attempt provided authentication. The moment the pulse emitter activated, Terran override protocols propagated through every shared communication handshake the Karthik's fleet had used upon arrival. General Hall stepped forward, closing the distance between himself and the envoy who had just tried to kill him. His voice did not rise. "You requested alliance," he said evenly. "You brought a weapon." Around them, Karthik's personal armor systems powered down involuntarily, joints locking under external control. The envoy attempted to activate a secondary device hidden beneath ceremonial plating. It melted in his grasp as localized heat surged through its circuitry. The trap had not failed. It had reversed. The Karthik's envoy attempted to salvage dignity. "A misunderstanding," he said, voice tightening as his armor joints remained locked. He tried to reposition, but the containment field held him upright, like a specimen pinned in place. Around the chamber, his delegation found their internal communications muted, their implants isolated from fleet channels. Terran counterintelligence had severed every private frequency the moment the pulse emitter fired. There would be no coordinated fallback. In orbit, the Karthik's battlecruisers initiated emergency override procedures. Their captains believed they could brute force control of propulsion and weapons arrays. They underestimated how deeply Terran infiltration had embedded itself during the so-called alliance pre-negotiations. Firmware updates shared weeks earlier under the guise of compatibility testing now activated dormant subroutines. Power distribution loops redirected away from weapon cores and into harmless thermal sinks. Cannons cooled before they could charge. General Hall gestured once. A tactical projection materialized mid-air, displaying real-time status of every Karthik's vessel in system. One by one, icons shifted from active to restricted. "You did not come here for peace," Hale said calmly. "You came to decapitate our command structure." His gaze did not waver. "You assumed we were careless." The envoy's composure fractured. He had expected panic. Instead, he was being briefed on his own failure. The Terran Council transmitted a system-wide notice. All civilian channels were informed that a diplomatic breach had occurred, but was contained. There was no hysteria, no mass mobilization. Humanity had prepared for treachery as a statistical certainty, not a possibility. Border fleets shifted into silent blockade positions around Karthik's vessels without firing. It was a cage formed from geometry, not aggression. The envoy finally understood the gravity of the situation when the Resolute Dawn's internal gravity shifted subtly, anchoring him in place. "Your fleet is disarmed," Hale continued. "Your covert strike capability is exposed, and your empire now stands in violation of every treaty you requested." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "This is the moment you decide whether this ends as humiliation or extinction." And, for the first time since stepping into Terran space, the Karthik's delegation felt something unfamiliar: vulnerability. The Karthik's High Command did not accept humiliation quietly. The moment their fleet realized its weapons were inert, a secondary contingency activated from beyond Terran sensor range. Hidden strike frigates cloaked and positioned weeks in advance ignited engines toward Earth's outer defense perimeter. The assassination attempt had been the opening move. If it failed, orbital sabotage would follow. They believed even disarmed fleets could create chaos through sacrifice. Terran early warning arrays detected the cloaked frigates before they cleared their stealth corridors. Humanity had allowed the Karthiks to believe their cloak technology remained undetected during prior border tensions. That illusion ended in a single frame of sensor data. The frigates were tracked, tagged, and isolated inside layered gravitational containment nets that distorted their navigation fields without firing a shot. Engines overloaded under forced recalibration. 3 vessels collided mid-maneuver as their flight paths inverted. In the flagship chamber, General Hale watched the projection update in real time. "You brought reinforcements," he observed quietly. The envoy's silence confirmed everything. Terran strike cruisers shifted from blockade posture to surgical engagement formation. They did not unleash barrages. They executed disablement sequences, precision rail bursts that severed propulsion arrays and command relays without breaching life support systems. Karthik's ships went dark across the perimeter. Panic spread through Karthik's command channels. Their entire assault framework, covert strike, decapitation, orbital sabotage collapsed within minutes. Every layer had been anticipated. Every maneuver predicted. Humanity had not responded emotionally to betrayal. It had unfolded pre-written countermeasures triggered by probability thresholds. What the Karthiks experienced as defeat was, in truth, automation. The final Karthik's frigate attempted a desperate suicide trajectory toward a Terran defense platform. Its engines surged beyond safety limits. Terran interdiction fields activated at maximum intensity, freezing the vessel in space as if time itself had halted around it. Internal systems shut down under forced override. In the chamber, Hall turned back to the envoy. "You miscalculated twice," he said evenly. "There will not be a third." And far beyond the confrontation chamber, Terran Fleet Command prepared something far less restrained than disablement. Terran Strategic Command elevated the response level from containment to correction. The distinction mattered. Containment protected Earth. Correction altered the aggressor's future capacity to threaten again. Across the system, Terran cruisers repositioned from defensive geometry into forward vector alignment. Targeting overlays expanded beyond the Karthik's fleet to include their remote command satellites and relay buoys, positioned at the edge of Terran space. The message was clear. This would not end at the chamber door. General Hale gave a single authorization. Terran strike assets deployed in synchronized waves, not toward Karthik cities, but toward their military backbone. Long-range rail platforms fired micro-penetration rounds, calibrated to disable shipyards without breaching civilian sectors. Orbital fabrication arrays powering Karthik's war production went offline in controlled cascades. Assembly lines froze mid-cycle. Drydocks locked under Terran override codes that rewrote fabrication permissions in real time. The Karthik's envoy watched the tactical feed populate with red restrictions across his empire's military grid. "You're dismantling our defense industry," he said, voice tightening. Halle did not deny it. "You attempted assassination under diplomatic pretense," he replied. "You activated hidden strike craft inside our perimeter. Your ability to project force into our territory ends today." There was no anger in his tone, only finality. Desperation drove the Karthik's high command to authorize a retaliatory strike toward a Terran border colony, hoping to salvage leverage. Their outbound missiles never reached mid-transit. Terran deep space interceptors, pre-positioned long before the Alliance request, neutralized the volleys with kinetic precision. The retaliation attempt only added another violation to an already catastrophic list. The Karthiks were not losing a battle. They were losing credibility. Within hours, Karthik's warship production halted completely. Fleet mobility remained restricted. Their covert assets were exposed and neutralized. Humanity had chosen not to annihilate, but to cripple. The envoy lowered his head, the arrogance gone. "We sought advantage," he admitted quietly. Hale's reply was immediate. "You sought deception? You found consequence." And beyond the chamber, Terran Fleet Command prepared the final measure that would ensure the lesson endured. The final measure was not destruction. It was exposure. Terran intelligence released a controlled data archive to every major interstellar network. The footage showed the concealed pulse emitter activating. It showed the hidden strike frigates powering up beyond sensor range. It showed the Karthik's envoy requesting alliance while preparing assassination. There was no narration, no commentary, just undeniable sequence. The galaxy watched the betrayal unfold frame by frame. Within hours, trade partners began suspending Karthik's agreements. Neutral powers froze joint defense exercises. Even long-standing allies distanced themselves publicly, unwilling to be associated with a regime that weaponized diplomacy. The humiliation the Karthiks had intended for humanity returned amplified. They had tried to fracture Terran command. Instead, they fractured their own reputation across civilized space. In the chamber aboard the Resolute Dawn, General Halle removed the adaptive command mantle from beneath his uniform and placed it calmly on the table between them. "We prepared for your move before you made it," he said evenly. "We do not walk into alliance talks unprotected. We do not assume goodwill from those who test our borders for years." The envoy had no reply left. His empire's fleets were disabled, its war industry dismantled, its covert operation exposed. Humanity did not demand territory. It did not impose occupation. It imposed oversight. Karthik's military firmware would now require Terran-authenticated security layers for future treaty participation. Their fleets would rebuild under monitored compliance. It was not annihilation. It was correction, architectural and permanent. As the Karthik's delegation was escorted from Terran space under supervision, a quiet message circulated through strategic academies across the galaxy. Deception against humanity does not create advantage. It triggers preparation. The Karthiks had asked for alliance. They chose betrayal. What they received was not war. It was a lesson written into the structure of their empire, and they would remember it every time their fleet systems required Terran validation to power on. The Karthiks believed diplomacy was weakness. They believed assassination would fracture Terran command. They believed deception was sophistication. They were wrong on every calculation. Humanity did not rage. It did not overreact. It executed pre-written consequence with precision. The attempted killing of our chief of staff did not create chaos. It revealed preparation. Somewhere beyond Earth's orbit, the resolute Dawn continues its patrol, and every species considering duplicity now understands a simple truth. Humanity accepts alliance in good faith. But if you attempt to strike under a handshake, you will not win. You will be corrected.